Can you explain why Milton says he will justify the ways of God to men in 150 words? Because here is one uncomfortable truth. You can know the four books that are prescribed in your syllabus. You can know Saturn. You can know the fall. You can know blank verse. You can know epic conventions. You can know Puritanism and still write an average UPSC answer. Why? Because knowing a literary text and answering a literary question are two different skills. And that is what we are going to fix today. I am going to take you to Paradise Lost, identify minimum knowledge you actually need for answer writing, and then I am going to take you to a real UPSC question and build an answer in front of you. Here is the first thing I want you to understand. UPSC doesn't reward you for reproducing everything you know. It rewards you for selecting the right knowledge for the question. Take this question for example. Paradise Lost tries to justify the ways of God to men. Comment. Now, many people will write Puritanism, they will write about Satan, they will write about Adam and Eve, they will write about redemption, they will write about epic tradition, and somewhere around paragraph 4, they will answer the question. That is backwards. UPSC, for UPSC, your question should control the knowledge, not the other way around. And today I'm going to give you a simple rule. Don't write 5 paragraphs. Write those 5 paragraphs as 5 or you can say 5 moves that may be contained in one paragraph or that may be contained in 5 different paragraphs. First move will be writing the thesis, that is what is your argument. Second will be the textual proof, what does the text show. Third will be the complication, what complicates the text. Fourth will be what is the critical verdict that I am going to give on the text, and finally you will come at a conclusion without repeating yourself. Now let us solve the next problem. Do we need to memorize all the 4 books? No. Do we need to know the theological architecture of 17th century England? No. And do we need to know every quotation of the poem? Absolutely not. For answer writing, I want to build what I am calling your minimum viable knowledge. So it will contain of 5 things that you have to take care of, and this will be the basic toolkit for your answer writing. You should have one structural argument. You should have 2 to 3 key episodes. You will have 3 to 4 flexible quotations that you will bring in on different core ideas of the poem. Then you will come to critical complications of the text and then a strong conclusion. Once you have this toolkit, you can expand it whenever you have time, but this will give you a foundation. So let us build it. First thing you need to understand is the core idea of Paradise Lost. Milton is expressing the idea of Theodicy, free will and divine foreknowledge. The first thing is Milton is giving a central intellectual poem and he announces it in the first book itself, where the ambition of poet is to justify the ways of God to men. He clearly says he wants to assert eternal providence and justify the ways of God to men. So, what is Milton trying to justify? He is trying to justify God's justice in a world where evil is existing. So, for a logical person, for a logical mind, a philosophical question always arises: if God is omnipotent as well as benevolent, then why does evil exist at all? Why does Satan rebel? Why does humanity fall? And if God already knew that fall will happen, can Adam and Eve genuinely be free? So, God's foreknowledge and human choices are being explored in Paradise Lost. Now, we need to understand an important term which we can use in our UPSC answer, which is called Theodicy. Theodicy is an attempt to reconcile divine goodness and justice of God with the existence of evil and suffering. So, it is at a theological scale. We are trying to reconcile existence of good and evil. Why evil exists at all. Theodicy is what we are going to point in our answer. So we can write in our answer that Milton's Paradise Lost is a project in Theodicy, or Milton's Paradise Lost is a theological project. Now let us talk about foreknowledge and free will. Milton dramatizes this same idea as well in Book 4. Even Satan admits, hadst thou the same free will and power to stand, thou hadst. Whom hast thou then, or what to accuse, but heaven's free love dealt equally to all? So this is one of your most important quotations. Argument here Satan is making is, if human beings were incapable of choosing evil, their obedience would have no moral value. So freedom is creating the possibility of disobedience. And this creates next question. If God already knows what people will choose, isn't the choice predetermined? Now Milton addresses precisely this problem. God is distinguishing between divine knowledge and human causation. Just because God knows something doesn't mean that he is causing the humans to do that activity. For example, you must have read in polity that if somebody is of unsound mind at the time of commission of the crime, that crime is not considered to be committed by him. Why? Because he was not able to put his conscious thought while committing the crime. So we need to understand what is the intent. Intent is important in commission of crime. Same way, divine knowledge doesn't create intention. God is, just because he has a knowledge, he doesn't have intention. He knows what will happen. He doesn't intend to commit it. Who is intending to commit? Humans are intending to commit the evil, and humans' intention to commit the evil causes the evil to happen. All right. If there was no freedom of choice, there will be no intention. And if freedom is absent, intention is absent. If intention is absent, causation will not be attributed to humans. That is what is important to understand. So this is the philosophical engine of poem. And this is where you have to start analyzing. So don't simply write that God knows Adam and Eve will commit the fall, but they have the free will. You have to write that Milton distinguishes divine foreknowledge with human causation, allowing poem to preserve both providence and moral responsibility. Now, book 9 is an important book. It is your best case study. If you want one episode from Paradise Lost that you can repeatedly deploy in books, you have to learn the book 9, The Fall. But don't merely tell the story, analyze the choices. Eve's temptation is important because Satan doesn't simply say, eat the fruit. He is constructing the argument for allowing Eve to be tempted so that she herself plucks the fruit to eat it. So, how does he construct an argument? He talks about the knowledge that the fruit will grant her. He talks about the freedom that will come with the knowledge. Knowledge will cause freedom, and freedom will result in equality. That is what Satan's argument is. Even the apparent injustice of God's prohibition is called out by Satan. So, Satan is asking, in effect, why should knowledge be forbidden? Why should human beings remain inferior? Why should they fear death? And finally, he also says that ye shall be as gods, knowing both good and evil. The temptation therefore works intellectually before it works physically, and that is important. Eve simply is not hungry, she is persuaded. And Milton makes that psychological process visible. Then comes the crucial moment where Eve extends the hand and she plucks the fruit and she eats it. She plucked, she eat. Book 9, lines 781. Immediately after she eats the fruit, what happens? There is a tremor that is felt by the earth, and It is being shown in the poem as earth felt the wound. Now notice the scale. A single human act becomes a cosmic event. That is exactly what you can do with this quotation. Don't simply write Eve eats the fruit. Write it as Milton transforms individual transgression into a disturbance of the entire created order. That is the analysis that you have to give. What about Adam? Adam knows. Milton explicitly tells us that he eats against his better knowledge, not deceived. He was not deceived by Satan. He eats it out of uxoriousness. What does that mean? He ate out of excessive love for his wife. Because Adam could not imagine a future without Eve, and Eve had already eaten the apple. That is why Adam also eats the apple. So, Adam is not a victim of Satan's deception. His motivations are complicated because he cannot accept a future without Eve. He chooses her. Now, don't say that Milton calls Adam uxorious. Just say that Adam's choice has often been interpreted with the idea of uxoriousness and excessive attachment to wife. So, this distinction will tell the examiner that you know the difference between terminology and critical vocabulary. And here is your argument that fall is not simply about disobedience, it is about freedom, it is about desire, it is about love, it is about judgment that collide each together and causes the fall to happen. And this is what you have to write for a strong answer. Now, what about Satan? Satan is a very dangerous part of Paradise Lost. You must have heard many critics say that Satan is the real hero of Paradise Lost. Blake has famously claimed that Milton was of devil's party without knowing it. So Milton gives Satan extraordinary rhetorical energy. He gives Satan ambition, he gives Satan intelligence, he gives him defiance, he gives him leadership, and he also gives him some of the important speeches, memorable speeches. For example, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. So, why does Satan's character create a problem for Milton's Theodicy? Because the readers, when they're casually reading it, may find Satan dramatically compelling. And even when they can recognize his motives are corrupted by pride, revenge, and self interest, they can also find Satan as a very, very compelling figure in Paradise Lost. And that is why later romantic writers and readers intensified the heroic interpretation of Satan. But Milton was not a romantic poet. Milton does not present Satan as a hero. Milton gives Satan heroic rhetoric and dramatic stature. So, what is Milton giving? Milton's Satan. I'm writing this down. He has two things. He has heroic rhetoric and he has dramatic stature. Milton also progressively exposes moral corruption of Satan that is beneath the apparent heroism. This will make a complete analysis of Satan. We have analyzed Satan and we have also analyzed Adam. Now, I'm also giving you 4 high value quotations that you can use in your answer. If there is a question, if there is a quote on free will, you can use earlier quotation and you can use this as well. But God left free the will, for what obeys reason is free, and reason he made right. Second, when we are talking about foreknowledge, we have already seen foreknowledge is not equal to causation. So you can write of providence, foreknowledge, will and fate, fixed fate, free will, foreknowledge, absolute. There is free will, but there is absolute foreknowledge. Then about the fall, we have seen what fall causes, how Eve causes the fall. But what about Adam? How does Adam eat the apple? She gave him of that fair enticing fruit with liberal hand. He scrupled not to eat. From Adam's point of view, he is scrupling not to eat. Use it for uh, uh, predestination versus compulsion. Next is earth trembled from her cosmic consequence. In case of Eve, when Eve feels it, earth felt the wound. Second time when Adam eats the apple, what happens? Earth trembled from her entrails as again in pangs, and nature gave a second groan. Skies lowered, muttering thunder. Storm sad drops wept at completing of the mortal sin. So here we are talking about mortal sin that is coming due to human agency. You can see that the cosmic consequence is far more deeper when there is a human agency involved, when it is done out of choice. All right. So these are four quotations that you can use other than the four we already discussed while we were building the minimum viable knowledge. Now let us try to solve the question. Paradise Lost tries to justify the ways of God to men. Let us try to answer the question. Step 1 is thesis. The thesis is Milton's Paradise Lost may be read as theological project, an attempt to reconcile divine justice with the existence of evil, suffering and human disobedience. Second is textual evidence. We will talk about Milton's God distinguishes foreknowledge from causation, insisting that humanity was created free to fall. Thus, Adam and Eve remain responsible for their choices, even though God foreknows the complication is. But Milton's justification is not uncomplicated. Satan's extraordinary rhetorical power makes rebellion intellectually seductive, while the fall exposes the difficulty of reconciling divine omniscience with genuine human freedom. Now, judgment is yet poem ultimately places responsibility for transgression upon the created beings rather than divine coercion. Conclusion is thus Milton's justification lies less in a simple defense of God's action than in constructing a moral universe in which freedom makes both virtue and disobedience meaningful. That is your answer. Notice what we did. There was no unnecessary plot summary, no dumping of terminology, no six quotations. We answered the question, we used the text, we introduced complexity, and we ended with the judgment. So here is the Paradise Lost algorithm. One is identify the intellectual problem. Is it free will? Is it obedience? Is it heroism? Is it gender? Is it knowledge? Two, choose one textual episode. Book 9 is usually extremely useful. Add one quotation that is properly explained. Then introduce a complication. It can be Satan, it can be foreknowledge, it can be ambiguity of freedom, it can be psychological complexity of the fall. And end with a judgment. Not summary, just give a judgment. So the method of answering should be text followed by the argument, followed by answer, and it will give you marks. Now, in the next class, we will talk about Gulliver's travel. We will, instead of memorizing the four voyages as four disconnected stories, we will see the scale that changes from satirical target as the Gulliver also changes. By the fourth voyage, the traveler who began by observing strange societies becomes deeply alienated from his own society. That is where we will go next. Before you leave, I want you to do one thing. Please share this video with somebody who is also preparing for UPSC literature in English and is struggling to convert the text into answers in 150 concise words, because I want the series to help you and gain above 300 marks, not just 250. I hope you gain above 300 marks and are able to achieve your dream of UPSC in 2027 itself. Have a great day. See you again.